Yes, hello. Welcome back to the Pioneer Podcast. Today we are joined by Emily Arrow, a director here at Omlie. So, welcome, Emily, on to the podcast. Today we're going to talk a little bit about your career journey, how you landed at Omlie, and then you can kind of reveal to our audience what you just introduced to the team.
So I started out in consulting, very much like many people who are here at Omlie, went right into college, into Big Four consulting. And, this was pre-COVID, so lots of travel, loved doing the project work and helping clients and having things be different all the time, but definitely was looking for something new when it came to the travel and the grind of being on the road. So I actually took a little bit of a break from consulting and went into industry at Aramark. So I had been mostly focused during my time in consulting in technology implementation, and so did a lot of consumer technology implementations at Aramark, things in food service like kiosk ordering, mobile food ordering. So pretty cool stuff. But I did miss the variability. It was very much deploying the same technology over and over. And that's what made me want to get back into consulting. When it came to joining Omlie, one of the things I'm really passionate about is people processes and how do we help support people internally in ways that are really meaningful. Given how small Omlie was, I was really excited by the opportunity to be able to do that here in a way that, I wasn't really able to do as much. So that's really what made me make the leap, and also transitions really well into kind of what I've been focused on here internally. My first project here at Omlie was a learning and engagement strategy project for one of our value-based care clients. And I'm very passionate about learning and development, so it was great for me to kind of get to dive into that with them. And in that project, everything for learning and development had been left up to individual teams, and they were just centralizing as a function. So it really was, what is the strategy? How do we tell the story and bring people along the journey? Because there was a lot of resistance to being told, you can create your assets on your own, to now there's a centralized group that was going to do it. So I love that there was that mix of storytelling. I've also done some cultural work, people culture assessments, just given my background and how interested I am in people processes. It's been really nice to be able to tap into that on the client side and provide that value to them. I've kind of taken those learnings from that learning and engagement project and really been focused on developing what we're calling Flight School at Omlie. We love the aviation puns, which is really, just trying to think creatively about how might we bring the right training at the right time to our team. I think everybody has examples of when they've had to go through a training and by the end of it, they've sat there for 2 hours and have said, what value did this bring to me? How can I apply this to my life, my job? And so we're trying to solve that. So we've developed a lot of guiding principles that are really trying to help us figure out what our current team needs and what our team might need in the future, and deliver that in ways that are best suited to how our team learns, how they like to learn.
The other thing I always laugh about with training is the ones that you just put on in the background and click through to make sure that you check the box and get it out. We're also not doing that.
No, I mean, we have to do compliance training, right? It's like the thing at the end when I talk about flight school, especially. I just did the overview with some of the new hires that just started, and compliance is a bucket there, and I skim over it a little bit because I'm like, yeah, we have to do some of this stuff, and not all of it's exciting, but the stuff we can control will make fun for you.
Yes, exactly.
That's critical about the way you have approached flight school and all of the different components you've been involved with, not just internally, but with our clients. Of like, how can we infuse that fun and joyfulness so it doesn't feel like a chore, but instead you really can appreciate the growth. I think with flight school and having passports that we stamp at the end of completing training is so unique. Even when I think about, you supported our effort around recruiting and setting up an incentive for our team as we're working to grow the team with people that we're really excited about. So can you share a little bit about how you designed, Plinko and the spin the wheel and that whole journey too?
Yeah, it very much came from, we asked how might we at Omlie, and this was something we hadn't done before. And so the question really was, how might we develop a, strong incentive program that the team is excited about to fill our pipeline for new hires. There had already kind of been the idea swirling before I joined Omlie about what if we had this wheel and you got to spin it and get prizes. And we struggled with, okay, well, bringing someone into the pipeline versus actually getting somebody hired, those might be different levels of rewards that we want to offer. And so it somehow evolved from this very wheel of fortune, spin the wheel, get a cool prize, for actually getting somebody to come to Omlie and having them hired. We developed a Plinko board that has a monetary value. And just in iterating and having that collective brainstorming, it's why I love collaborating with pretty much anybody who's here at Omlie. We're bouncing ideas off of each other and getting excited. And it was just really cool to roll it out at the end of last year. I think I knew people were going to be excited about it, but, and I mean, I know the video has been on our socials like multiple times. The reaction from the team was, I think, beyond what I had even hoped. And we do it in our monthly meetings where we spin the wheel and bring it out. And it just like is this moment, like you said, this moment of joy at the end of the meetings where everybody gets to rally around and be supportive of each other. Like, I don't think there's been a, oh, bummer, it wasn't me. It was, ooh, what's the person going to get? And I just love that. I mean, we've talked about it. I think, we've all had experiences of being at companies where it doesn't feel like they're leading with what's right for people. And that's something that I'm so passionate about. I have a background in humanities that I don't use, but I try to infuse it in business wherever I can. So I feel really lucky that I've been able to do that in multiple ways at Omlie. And it's something that I think more businesses should be doing, which is why I also try to infuse it into my client work as much as I can.
I feel like there was like a humbleness in that story where you're like, somehow we evolved to this Plinko thing. I mean, it was so, I feel like you were such at the helm of that to say like, we could just set up a recruiting bonus. So every time you hire someone, you get a personal check, but how are we celebrating each other and the effort that it takes to really find really talented people that we truly want to be with and spend our time with. And that's how it started to evolve from, because that's kind of static and that's how everybody does it. How can we take it to a whole other level?
Right.
And even that day when we launched up the team, same thing. I was so blown away by the reaction of the team. And it was such a beautiful thing that you all were like, we're just going to figure this out. And I remember Nick coming to me and saying like, well, we're thinking like on the Plinko, we're going to do 2,000, 3,000, and 5,000. Is that okay? And I was like, that's amazing. Let's put bigger prizes on there. Like, what crazier prizes can we have?
Right.
And I think that's so much of the joy. And I think that moment when we played for the first time, I always think of Laura, who's on our team. Afterwards, she said to me, Sarah, I was sitting at the corner of the couch. I was so comfortable. My legs were up. I was lounging back. And when Amy hit 5,000, I star jumped on the couch in joy.
It was amazing.
Like she did. And it was like that collective excitement for each other. It was so cool.
Amazing. It was like that moment in sports where like everybody, it was that level of excitement. And that's what I wasn't expecting, but it was awesome. And the nice thing too is, one of the things that I was thinking is, it gets, I don't want to say old, but when you have the same reward over and over and over again, it becomes less motivating. And so for me, it was very much, how do we add that element of chance where you don't lose because all the prizes are great, but like you don't know what you're going to get. And so that's what I'm hoping will like keep it exciting moving forward as people continue to get that reward. It brought me a lot of joy to work on that, and I'm glad it brought other people a lot of joy too.
I'm like reliving that moment. It was definitely my top 5 all-time forever Omlie moments was that day. But let's go back to your career journey. Can you talk to us a little bit about like what was the most proud or defining moment of your career so far?
That's a really good question. So I think moving to Deloitte, right, everybody comes out of college. And as I said, I had this humanity background, and we would have classes where we would talk about the purpose of work and finding value in work. And everyone, when you come out of college, is like, awesome, I'm going to go do that thing I want to do. And it's going to be super inspiring. And I'm going to be able to bring all of these philosophical questions to my teammates. And like, everyone's going to love it. And that, I mean, right, Big Four consulting, that's not what happened. I very quickly realized, I'm in the workforce now, and they are treating this as a business and care more about that. Not that you shouldn't care about your business when you're running a business, but like weighing that with people. And so I think that there was part of me that when that happened, I internally thought that part of me needed to be shut off. Right, that I couldn't make that impact.
Yeah.
Because I had just entered the workforce. Like, who's going to listen to me? And so I kind of was like, okay, well, like that part of Emily is over in this box. And so I would say that was pretty defining, maybe in a negative way, because it created this journey of, I knew I couldn't be there. Right. And so ultimately I left because I felt like there wasn't that reliance on, what is good for our people? How are we making sure our people are having a good experience? So it defined me in that I didn't think that was possible. But then it also defined in like kind of what I looked for. And I do think in the career choices I made leading from that and like ultimately what brought me to Omlie, it's been that search of maybe there is hope that I don't have to shut that part of me off. And so I would say maybe the proudest moment for me is everything we've just talked about, whether it's flight school or the recruiting incentives. I feel like that part of me has been able to be brought forth and really make an impact. And I can have these kind of, right, we're having a podcast where I'm talking about this. I don't think I ever thought that there would be a business opportunity for me to have these kind of conversations. And so I would say that whole trajectory, it's not maybe a moment, but the moment of realization and the moment of what I've discovered now here at Omlie is probably the proudest accomplishment of my career, that I feel like I've landed somewhere where what I had wanted to do when I had all of that just out of college fervor, I'm able to do.
That was really nice to hear. I think I've had such a unique and amazing journey from a cultural perspective with work that sometimes it makes me like sad and then happy for people that never experienced that before they may have gotten here. I started at a small nonprofit that had the same type of vibe, that it was like everybody knew each other as humans. We all knew each other's, spouses' names, kids' names, pet names, whatever it was. We spent time together outside of work, which isn't always like the culture thing, but we really connected really well and looked out for each other and knew life came first. Everybody had their life and then they had work.
Yeah.
And then when I left there to get into consulting was my first little bump in the culture road, where it was a small company that had fully intended to be structured and then sold. And so that was the vibe. It was a startup that they were trying to get rid of. And I knew in that moment that that was not the type of culture or vibe that I wanted to be a part of. And at the time I was talking to someone saying like, this sucks. Like I really want to go back to some place that I love. And they were like, nobody likes their job. And I was like, that's not true. I used to like my job. So I know that you can like your job. And then when I found my way then to my next stop and then obviously to here, it was like, how do I join Omlie and create like the same type of experience that I've been so fortunate to have throughout my career?
I was at Deloitte for 4 years. I never met my career counselor in person. And he was also based in the same office as I was. And this is the person who's like responsible for advocating for me, right? And so that's, another thing that I'm super passionate about here is our career counselor program. My experience is based on things I maybe didn't have and making sure we make it right for the future.
Right.
But I always share that example because I feel like that's just so telling.
Those bad experiences, bad leaders, those are the best teachers. It's terrible when you're in it because it's awful, but it teaches you so many of those lessons of how you never want people to feel in your company, the kind of companies you want to look for and work for. And, my core why for starting Omlie was similar to what you're describing, Emily, was just like, can't we just create a place where we don't have to waste all the time and energy, like contorting and concealing who we are, just to hopefully get invited to the table, not even like to get the ticket to the front of the line. And it's just a waste. It's a waste of energy. It's a waste of time. It makes good human sense not to do it. And it turns out it makes good business sense because people can just lean into their strengths and not have to worry about all of that. And, it's something that's very much on my mind as we continue to scale, like ensuring that we keep that to be true because so many people hate their jobs. So many people are in toxic environments. And that's because business was designed like 250 years ago.
Right.
For, Scrooge McDuck.
Right.
They're benefiting, right? So how are we building companies that benefit all of us and not just, Scrooge McDuck at the top there?
I do think that you go one of two ways. When you learn from a bad boss, you either become a bad boss or you want to do the exact opposite. And so I think everyone so far that has found their way to Omlie has been on that journey where they want to be in a good place and not replicate their bad experiences as well.
And that's why I love that as a leadership team, you all are so supportive of putting these processes in place now while we are so small. Because certainly there's challenges of scalability as we get bigger, but it's so important to make sure that these processes, like the counselor process, that people are going to have a consistent experience when they come to Omlie. Because to your point and everything you just said, if only 2 or 3 people get that experience here, like what does that do for who we are and what we say we are? And so I love that there's so much effort in defining what these processes look like early on so that we can, take that head on and make sure that the way that we're speaking about this to everybody who works here is consistent and equitable.
And expectations are set when people come in the door.
And I think what's been really incredible is that our clients are asking us to do the same thing for them.
Right.
So all of the things, typically in consulting, you kind of like deliver a strategy and then you're like, bye, see ya, good luck, and you don't always see how it comes to fruition and how it really has to operate within a company and that company's culture. And so it's been amazing for clients to say like, well, how do you do it? Can we just copy what you're doing? Because we're proving it. We're proving that it can work and the value and that the impact of people having a place where they can just be their authentic selves is good human and business sense.
And that's what gives me hope. Not that sure, it's great that I found that for myself. I love that our clients are taking notice and wanting to learn from us and that it can extend beyond us because while it's great to create it for ourselves, like I'm really excited about the impact that we can make in the world. I know it sounds crazy to say the world, but the world.
It's true.
Our mission.
Yeah.
It is.
Emily, one of the things we do when everybody joins the team here at Omlie is ask you to choose a pioneer that inspires you. And so we'd love to hear the pioneer that you've chosen.
My pioneer is a woman named Leota Toombs. And fun fact about me, I am a huge Disney fan, have been forever. And so when I needed to pick a pioneer, I was like, if I don't pick somebody at Disney, it's all over for me. She came to the Walt Disney Company really in the only way they were hiring women back in the 40s, which was through the art and paint department. So she was originally an artist and she basically joined the company just to copy the work of lead animators on films. And then ultimately she was able to build a name for herself with her own designs and models. And she was able to work on some of the original attractions that were at the New York World's Fair. And some of those have included things that are in the Haunted Mansion, which is my personal favorite favorite ride. She contributed to that so much so that anyone who's familiar, she is the face of Madame Leota, who is in the crystal ball when you go through the ride. So it's also my favorite ride. So like worlds collided. It was perfect. But then she went on, she was also really passionate about developing others. And so she actually took some time off from the company to raise her own children. But then coming back, she was a mentor and helped train future Imagineers at Walt Disney World, especially since she was one of the first women who got to that role. And her daughter and granddaughter are actually also currently Imagineers at the Walt Disney Company. So I just love that she was really able to make that name for herself and pave the way for Imagineers to come, but then also wanted to give back through learning and development, which, as we've discussed, is something near and dear to my heart. So she seemed like the perfect person for me to pick.
Your pioneer portrait is one of my favorites because of the crystal ball. Super cool.
Yeah. I love that Leota's story, too, that she took time away to raise her family and then paved the way for her daughter to follow in her footsteps.
Yeah.
Like, how incredibly meaningful.
And then granddaughter, you said, too, right? So
Yep.
that's awesome.
Yeah, she's at the company now,
What a
too.
legacy. That's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So another pioneering thing we do here at Omlie is our vision coaching. And Emily just finished her, journey through the vision journey with our executive coach, Sharon. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how that went for you? What was the experience? And then if you're open to sharing your actual vision.
I wouldn't call myself a skeptic, but I went into it being like, there's no way I can come out with this really like visionary thing. I wouldn't say I consider myself a visionary, although now that I've gone through this process and like looking at some of the things I've done in Omlie, I'm like, all right, maybe I need to give myself a little bit more credit.
Well, maybe you can think about it as an Imagineer.
Here we go. Ooh, I like that. Now I need to get an Omlie Imagineering shirt or something like that for myself.
You saw the sparks fly immediately in Emily's mind of like, what is the merchandise?
Yes, exactly. Where's the swag come in?
I very much tried to go into it with an open mind, very receptive to whatever comes out of this, like I am prepared to receive. You know, I came out with something that I'm actually really excited about and inspired by. My vision statement that I came out with is I want to inspire leaders to create the conditions that allow for people-first conversations, even on taboo subjects like miscarriage. And so, you know, part of my personal history is I experienced a miscarriage when I was at my previous company and had very much kind of held that you don't tell people until your first trimester is over. And what I found is that especially being at work, being remote, first of all, I can't imagine going through that experience if I had been in more of an in-person world. But then also the way that things had happened, I did have to take time off to have surgery and ultimately ended up telling people at work anyway. And the more I thought about it, you know, I've been kind of stewing on this idea for a while that, you know, I don't really know where that 12-week rule came from, but it's something that everybody kind of adopts as something that is almost convention now. And the more I've thought about it, the more, at least for me personally, I'm more convinced that whenever I do get pregnant with a second child, I will not be holding to that, especially not at work. I realize that I am privileged at Omlie in the fact that we have a team culture where I feel like I can share that news in advance, but not doing that just sets women up to be isolated, to ignore symptoms, to work through potentially being really sick and having to hide such a significant part of what's happening, especially if something does go wrong down the line, just opens up this can of worms of, well, now I have to tell people. I don't want the people that I'm really close with at work to feel like I didn't trust them. I want to have a community that can, you know, rally around and support me if something should happen. You know, I'm really excited. I got to talk to Sarah about it and we kind of brainstormed about how I can start to get this message out there. So I'm thinking about, you know, how does this show up potentially as a TED Talk I could write, like just to really inspire people. And I think it goes beyond miscarriage. I think we don't talk about grief enough at work, you know, even fertility treatments. There are so many parts of being a human that go back to what I talked about at Deloitte when I felt like I had to kind of hide that part of myself. The business world is really doing a disservice to people by not creating environments where people can be open with what's going on in their personal lives. And so it's something that I'm excited to move forward and see how I can try to make a difference in the broader world by sharing my story and seeing how we can inspire other people to create opportunities to allow people to have those conversations in their own businesses as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, especially the vulnerability behind it as well. And I agree with you. I've always thought I've never been pregnant myself. I've never had children, but I have a lot of friends who have gone through miscarriages. And I always found it to be like somewhat sad that they had to grieve alone. I can't imagine being able to do all of the things that I have to do as a human without the support of my leadership team members and the team who rally around each other when life gets hard. And so why not share things?
I knew of some people before who had had miscarriages, but it wasn't until I opened up about my story that people who are in my social circles, I had no idea because nobody talks about it. And so that I think is really where this started for me, is that I share my story because I want people to know that they can come to me if they need support. And so people as a society aren't talking about this. Even if that were to start to happen, I don't think they would at work. And so, I mean, we spend so much of our time at work and with our coworkers.
I agree.
It's so much, Emily, we were talking at the top about like just opportunities start to collide to create new things. And I am personally so inspired by your vision, which is why I feel like our conversation about it was just like explosive with ideas of how we can support you and bringing this to life. My closest, dearest, longest friends are my cousins, and both are pregnant right now. And I was aware that they were both pregnant early in the journey. And I remember saying to my one cousin, like, why do you keep that secret? You're feeling the sickest you've ever felt. You're absolutely exhausted. You're like humping your way, commuting into New York City in the heat, and like nobody knows because of this fear that you might suffer a miscarriage. So you don't want to, make other people uncomfortable?
Right, that's what
like
I mean.
The more we were unpacking the conversation, and I was just like, I'm just so confused. And we even said it in the conversation, like, who made that rule? And the rule is really just to try to make other people feel comfortable. Paul, like, why?
Yeah.
What does that do to you and your ability to thrive and be who you are? It doesn't help it. And so it's of many things we think about with women's health, menopause, miscarriage, pregnancy, fertility treatments. They're all things that are done in secret to make everybody else feel comfortable. But if we're able to actually open up and share that vulnerability and those stories, then we actually can feel comfortable and solve the problems. And so I'm so excited to see how your vision really comes to life, because I think it's absolutely critically needed in the world, and especially in workplaces.
Yeah. And I'm very grateful, that I had the opportunity to kind of realize this for myself, because I think it's something I've been thinking about, but certainly didn't have the time to put any sort of structure around. But then I'm also very grateful for the support of Omlie and kind of how you've rallied behind this, because there's still